we have few instructions for our members, our participants for this webinar session in Google Meet. I will give you the instructions, and later that our member, student fellow Sriram will join to the meet, and he will explain other instructions, and he will give an introduction to this session. And the major instructions are: you should switch off your mic and switch off your camera, except when you are speaking something or when you are asking question to the speaker. We have a core team in between in among our students. There is a students core team. So they will collect your questions. You can type your questions in the chat window. There's a chat window in Google Meet. So you can type your questions in chat window. The chat window is for the questions. No other discussions are allowed in chat window. So you can ask your questions. You can type your questions in chat window, and we will collect that questions. And at the time of question answer session, our students will select the questions, and you can ask the question to the speaker as per the students call you. And once more, I want to repeat that you should switch off your mic and camera. Otherwise, it will be an interruption to the speaker. And please don't share your screen when the speaker starts share his screen. Uh, it will be an interruption. We faced that many times. So please don't share your screen. And one more good news for the participants: if you have a social media account, the UL Space Club is also active on social media, and you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And we also having a YouTube channel. If you lose any, if you face any internet connection problem throughout the program or throughout the webinar, so you can watch it later on the YouTube. So don't worry about that. And we are streaming it on YouTube, and we will provide you the YouTube channel link and Instagram, Facebook links soon in the chat window. And once more time, I just want to repeat that don't use chat window for unnecessary conversations. Please use it for the questions only. It's designed for the question to ask your questions, and please don't misuse it. If any of your friends would like to contact UL Space Club or our team, you can ask them to message us on our WhatsApp numbers, or in our mail ID, or in our Instagram ID. So it will be better. Please ask them to contact us, and you should encourage them, and you should tell them about the UL Space Club, and it will be a very nice thing for us. And once upon we have new members, so I welcome all of them to the webinar session 19. And our instructions: one, you should switch off your mic, and please switch off your camera also, and please don't share your screen while the speaker starts sharing his screen. It will be an interruption. Both all these three things will be an interruption to our speaker, so don't try to do that. Please switch off your mic and camera, and please don't share your screen. And one more thing I want to remind you that there's a quiz competition after this webinar session. We will provide the link in the chat window after the session. It's coordinated by our core team member, Sriram, and we will provide the link there. And you should answer the questions as precisely and fast. So we will select a winner. There's a cash prize for the first prize winner, and there's certificates for the second and third prize winners. So there will be case. Don't forget that. Please, all of you, please attend that. Welcome to the new series. All of you are welcome to the session, and please follow our instructions. And our core team member Sriram will join soon, and he will provide you more instructions about the session, and he will talk to you about the session, give you an introduction about the session. The major instructions, I want to repeat that. Uh, Please don't share your screen, and please switch off your mic and your camera while the speaker starts speaking. Don't try to make an interruption to the speaker, and don't leave the meet where the meeting is going. And once more time, please switch off your camera and mic, and please don't share your screen, and please don't leave the meet till 5 p.m. And it will be a nice experience to all of you, and to get knowledge and to interact with our chief speaker. He's a scientist from VSSC, and we have a lot of other chief patrons like Utsa and Jaram sir. So now I like to welcome our core team member Sriram to introduce about the session and give an introduction about the session, and he will give you more instructions about the program. And I will provide you the links of our Instagram and Facebook page and our YouTube channel link in the chat window. And at the last part of the session, we will provide you the quiz link, and you should attend the quiz program. There are prize for the first winner and second, third prizes. Sriram.
Thanks, Varnata. Am I audible?
Yes, Sriram, you are audible.
Okay, I think we can go to the result of the past webinar quiz, the last webinar quiz, which was in the electrochemistry. But is that ready?
Yes, absolutely, Sriram. But I think we can wait till a few more participants come in. But till then, you can give the other instructions and things.
Okay, fine. So, Varnatan give the instructions to you. I will add up some more that you don't try to present the screen while the speaker turns his speak, because somehow we may left the Google Meet while it's going on because of some technical glitches. But when you after come that, don't tap on present now. Please ask to join again, and then comes that will be good. And always tap the presentation screen while like Bharat is presenting now, and tap on his screen. And the speaker, the Shani sir, will also have a presentation, and tap on the presentation from the people's list. It will be better if you do so. So then you will not feel some problems in seeing the whole presentation slides. That's the major instruction I have to give to you. And more on that, the Instagram link is now on chat box. Abhiram, our junior member, gave the Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram links in chat box. So please check it out right now.
So Sriram, I just had to post the chat in chat window the YouTube link and our Instagram and Facebook page links, and you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and also subscribe us on YouTube. It will be better. And as like Sriram said, you can pin the presentation screens. If our speaker start presenting the screen, you can pin it on our Google Meet. Otherwise, when a network connection problem arrives, you will lose the presentation screen. So over to Sriram.
Okay, Verneta. So I have to inform you that we have a group, a WhatsApp group named Cosmos, which is for the students who are highly interested in space. And there will be a lot of discussions on the topics related to science. And the invitation you may get from Varun and Bharat and they will post their numbers in the chat box. I think it will be better if you join in that WhatsApp group. You will get all the updates from us, and there will be a parallel webinar series on that group also. So please try to join in that WhatsApp group.
Sriram, are we good to go?
Yes.
Yes, Bharat.
Okay, so thank you so much. Welcome to the 19th session of UL Space Club's webinar series, and this time we have a pretty good topic named There is Chemistry in Everything Around Us, and it is taken by Dr. Shaneet M., who's a scientist at Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, ISRO, Thiruvananthapuram. But before we move into today's session, a couple of minutes to announce the results of UL Space Quiz 18. As you know, after every session, we have a quiz, which is over Google Forms, where you are asked a few questions based on what you've learned in each session, as well as some general knowledge on the topic of discussion. So here are the results of UL Space Quiz 18, which was conducted on the 19th of September 2020, based on the topic electrochemistry, the philosophy, and science. I hope you can see my slides, isn't it?
Yes, but it's fine.
Okay, so let's move into the results in the usual conventional way from third to first. So the third prize has been bagged by Arya Sudhakaran, and she is a BSc Physics student at Providence Women's College, Calicut. Congratulations, Arya. The second prize has been bagged by a friend of mine, and her name is Avani N, and she's a 12th standard bioscience student at Memunda HSS. The first prize, along with the cash prize from Cinderware Nurture, has been bagged by a person who has been a former winner of the quiz beforehand, and he is Anand Krishna, and he's a 12th standard bioscience student at Peramra HSS. Congratulations to all winners and all participants, and best of luck to all of you for today's session as well. But before we move into today's very important session, let me please take a few moments to tell you the most important instructions that Varun and Sriram have been repeating for a lot of time already. But let me take a couple of minutes to go through them, just give you a repeat before we move into the introductory session. The most important and the first thing is to keep your mics and your cameras muted. When you join the meeting, your cameras and your mics will automatically be muted, and we want it to stay that way unless the organizers or the speaker wants you to do so. So just keep your mics and your cameras off. And the second important thing is about asking questions. You can ask your questions anytime in the chat box. So the conventional way that we are used to is that you can ask your questions by typing them in the chat box anytime in between the session, and the best questions will be articulated and will be asked in a question and answer session, which will follow our speaker session today. So you can ask your questions either in English or Malayalam, but make sure that your questions are typed in the respective alphabets of the particular language that you're using. That is, please don't type Malayalam questions using English alphabets the way that you're used to in chatting, which will hinder the translation process, which has to be taken care of. So you can ask your questions in any way. There's no problem about that, but use the particular alphabets of the language that you're using. Please don't ask the questions and interrupt the speaker unless the speaker wants you to do so. The third most important thing is to not present your screens at any cost. Please do not present your screens. If by any chance you do present your screens, please click on stop presenting at that instant itself. The problem is that if you present your screens, the slides of the presenter will be lost temporarily. But there is always a possibility that someone might present their screens. So in that case, if you don't want to lose the slides of the speaker, make sure that you pin the slides of a speaker. So whenever Dr. Shaneet presents his screen, at that very instant, move your mouse pointer or your cursor or whatever into the center of his slide. You'll see this pin kind of icon, and if you click on it, you'll be able to pin his slides on the screen, and you won't lose it even if someone else presents it. And if by chance you're not able to find his presentation, you can click on the people's option, which is towards the side of the chat option. Click on people and you'll get the list of all participants. Browse and you'll find his presentation. Usually it'll be his name followed by presentation, which is written inside a pair of parentheses. So click on it and you'll be able to pin that as well. And the fourth and final important thing is about what another important thing is that this session will be followed by the 19th edition of UL Space Quiz. So you will have the link to the space quiz, which will be given in between the session, but the quiz will only be activated once the whole session today is over. Like usually it gets activated at 5 p.m. and you have time to answer till 7 p.m. You'll have questions which are based on what you've learned today and some general knowledge on the topic of discussion. So it is not compulsory. You can answer it, but there are prizes, obviously. The first, second, and third will get their own respective certificates, and the first prize winner will also get a cash prize, which is sponsored by Cinder Benacha. So we'll be providing the link in between the session. Do check the chat box to find it. And also, it will only be activated. Let me remind you again, it will only be activated once the whole session has been completed, and you have to finish, you have to submit it before 7 p.m. Any submissions after 7 p.m. will not be accepted, and your score as well as your time of submission is what matters. So the faster, the better. The final thing is about Cosmos that Sriram and Varun have already talked about. So if you are a space enthusiast or a science enthusiast in itself, you can contact us. Our personal numbers will be provided in the chat box. So you can ask us to join Cosmos by introducing yourself on WhatsApp, and we'll be adding you. You'll get all our real-time updates, as well as you can engage in plenty of discussions on space facts as well. Without hindering your session today, without taking any more time, let me invite Sriram to the introductory session. Back to you, Sriram.
Okay, Bharat, am I audible and visible?
Absolutely, Sriram, I think, yes.
Okay, good afternoon to all of you. Thanks to Varunathan and Bharat for providing the instructions and announcing the results of the past webinar quiz. I welcome all the veterans, scientists, teachers, UL Space Club organizers, students, and all other participants to the 19th session of UL Space Club webinar series. We, the UL Space Club, is a foundation under Uralungal Labor Cooperative Society, stands for enriching and flourishing the scientific aptitude of students. Within the 3 years from the starting, we conducted many great events physically, that's before the COVID. And from the beginning of the COVID pandemic era, we started this new thing, that is our webinar series, which is going extremely well for these past 5 months. Today, in the 19th session, we have Shaneed M as the lead speaker on the topic, there is a chemistry in everything around us. He's a renowned scientist from VSSC, that's Vikram Sarabhai Space Center under ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization. Many of us got the opportunity to visit VSSC. It's a fascinating arena for us who are highly interested in space and science, all other steps. So it's our privilege and pleasure to have an experienced scientist from there itself. I welcome you, sir. And we have Varunathan, Abhinandatan, and all other core team members here to give you the instruction when it is necessary. And the moderator of the session, our all-in-all, Shajil sir, is here to control the session, and he will give the introduction of the speaker. Our chief mentor, E.K. Kutisa, the former HRD director of ISRO, is here with us as always. And Jairam sir and the whole webinar family, including the eminent scientists all over India, is here with us. Master Bharat Srijit, a NTSC scholar and UL Space Club fellow, is here to handle the Q&A, the question and answer session after the talk. And Damodaran sir, the one who plays the major role in connecting us to UL, is here to express the word of thanks after the session completes. Our streamer, Adil Krishna, is also ready, and I think all set. So without any longing, I welcome the moderator, Shajil sir, to take over the things.
Thank you, Bharat. We are proud of you, the youth of this, the crew, real crew of this program. They are the students, and they are flourishing well. That's only one part of our aim for these kind of activities of the UL Space Club. Exactly in the era of pandemic, we are enjoying, even between the little bit difficulties faced by the society. And now we are searching for the pure science, and we are getting the words and the experience from the scientists and technical experts of India, especially from ISRO, IAST, and IITs, ISERs. All these institutions are flourishing us, and all these more than 100 students are participating in these things, and they are continuously getting these kind of lectures and exposures from these eminent scientists for the past 19 weeks. I think it's a great event in the case of the science activities all over India. These kind of a consistent science activities in the form of a webinar and some other activities is going on here, and we are so proud to present you today the topic, the chemistry in everything around us. Actually, I am a biology teacher. I ask all the students what is life. Then they search for the life, and finally they will reach into the conclusion that the life is nothing but chemistry. Normally we think that the world is made of physical objects and substances and phenomena, but when we go deep and deep, everything rests with chemistry, and the chemistry reveals even the origin of life. And today we have a person from chemistry, and he's from the prestigious institute of our ISRO, that is Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, Trivandrum, Dr. Srinith M. And he's a project leader for fuel cell power system and deputy head energy system division in Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, Trivandrum. And he's also a fellow of Kerala Academy of Science. Moreover that, we can say that he's a native of Wayanad. In the previous webinar also, we had a person from Wayanad. He's from ISER now, Dr. Mohammed Mustafa. That means these areas, even from all these persons, we are searching for their academic pathway also. We want to expose it before these students because they want to make it as a role model and they want to follow your pathway, sir. That's why we notice all these things. And he's a chemical engineer from Government Engineering College, Thrissur. After that, he got admission to MTech in chemical engineering from IIT Kanpur and PhD from IIT Delhi. These are the two prestigious institutions that ever get for a students with a high aspirations. And he joined, this brilliant personality joined VSSC in 1997, and he's working in the electrochemical energy system for spacecraft applications. In the initial years, he worked on development and realization of battery cell for use of satellites. Currently, he is working on design and development of fuel cells and electrolyzer system for space missions and various other applications of ISRO. He is also associated with production and supply of lithium-ion cells for launch of vehicles and satellites. And we can say that this is the continuation of or the extension of the previous webinar, and we will get some more information on energy. And beyond that, we will know chemistry everywhere, even in our life, in our surroundings. So we have a good environment here that we created through this webinar series, and these students are getting enriched continuously, and that environment we want to make by conducting these kind of webinars and some other activities of UL Space Club. And we have our chief patron, Kuti sir, here. Jairam sir is also here. He is also a member of our Space Club. And we have the teachers and students and all the aspiring community is here. And with them, we proudly invite our chief guest, Dr. Srinith VSSC, to this forum. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, a very good afternoon to the bright minds who are eagerly waiting in this session, and also the respected seniors and all those who are watching this session. It's indeed a great privilege to be there with you today. I've been listening a few sessions in the previous weeks, and I could see the kind of enthusiasm with which you all are participating in this. Really, I feel proud to be here today. And I was, as you know, I'm working in Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, focusing on the space missions. When I'm speaking to science enthusiasts and of course the space enthusiasts, I thought I should speak something in general about science as well. And of course, I'll speak something about space missions as well. So I hope I can move on to my presentation. I hope my...
It's okay, sir. It's, there is chemistry, everything around us. The slide has come. Okay, it's okay.
Come up, right? So I'll go on. In case any interruption comes, please let me know.
We'll get back to you, sir. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So fine. So let me start with the slide presentation. So I just thought of bringing the word chemistry right here. I think even those non-science enthusiasts probably, may be familiar with the word chemistry. Chemistry is there everywhere now. I mean, it just simply speaks about, kind of a combination or apart from the academic chemistry. So it is there everywhere. So everybody is familiar with this. So now if you fall deep into science or in the quest of knowing things, then probably you'll come to know that ultimately, you have to go into the molecular level. You will have to finally look for the chemistry there. Whether it is, the nature of a molecule, its behavior, or how to tackle it. So that's where we are there today. So we all know that the humans have progressed from the caveman days to the space age. So it has been a tremendous progress. When you look back, one can imagine how it could really be achieved. So many factors contributed to it. If you academically look into it, there are several factors that have worked into it. But one common thing you can really say is that this has been riding on the science wheel. And the science wheel is consisting of all disciplines of science. You cannot say one is more or less. All disciplines of science have very meticulously contributed to this science wheel, and it is moving on further and further. And it is guiding us, it is cheering us, it's explaining things to us about the nature, the universe. It provides us, I would say, the food what we really need, and it helps us to find water. The various materials that really, that's made this world a modern world from the prehistoric days. Those materials have come through the scientific discoveries and inventions. It provides us shelter. It even tells us, it helps us to grow. It supports life. Anything you take, every domain of life, you can see its reach. And it has really enabled humans to thrive. It's very important. When you move through the slides, you will come to know it's very important that we need to thrive here. The contribution of science is immense there. And this is the reason we are probably a large number of people are getting attracted to science. It's sheer because it has got that kind of an impact on the humans. And we may learn and approach it in different directions. You can call it chemistry, you can call it maths, you can call it physics, biology, or whatever. So ultimately, everything is taking us to science, and the science is carrying us towards future. So when I talk about chemical science, so as I already mentioned, the nature of all matters around us, what are they, how they behave, when and why do they change, how to make use of them, how they react, how they change. And of course, as Shadil has mentioned, what we are. So all the answers ultimately take us to the chemical nature of things and materials. So here I'll be trying to spend some time on the learning of science and knowing of nature and designing new systems to move forward in a chemical science way. So let us just start with what we are so familiar with, the daily life, so which generally we know, we ignore. We don't find science. We find science in laboratories. We find science in books, and maybe now in internet, Google when we search. But what is happening around in our kitchen, what we eat, probably we ignore them. Let us just try, this is how we can enjoy our life by knowing it. You just start with the morning toothpaste. It has so many chemicals inside with specific functional requirements, and it is designed for that. You have so-called calcium carbonate, sorbitol, glycerine, titanium dioxide, and so many of them. All these have got each specific functions. So you can add value to that by adding new constituent to it. Some act as abrasive, some prevents loss of water, some provides its whiteness, some inhibits bacterial growth, and so forth. So many functions in that small amount of material that we use every day. So it starts from there, and then there are various things you can talk about. I'm just picking a few that generally we deal with. Let us come to understanding the rice, the staple food that we normally eat. You can see the animation, natural rice, when you do all the processing, and finally nowadays when it reaches your kitchen for cooking, what happens to it? You get the picture what shown above shows the color change. It has got about 5 constituents, and finally it loses everything, and it ends up with the only thing called endosperm. And see, when you look at what this endosperm is, which we really eat, the carbohydrate, which consists of amylose and amylopectin. You are familiar with these materials. And then, and all other bran and all other materials that probably it is lost. And then this is, it is non-digestible, and that's how we cook it. When it cooked, its membrane is damaged, and the starch granules get into water, and it loses its semicrystallinity, and it comes out of the granules. Amylose comes out of the granules. And the enzyme amylase, which is there in your saliva, it digests into maltose, which is it is a very simpler sugar. Just look at the saliva enzyme, which really does this job. It is the amylase. So, and another important evolutionary aspect you can understand from this chemistry, an evolutionary aspect is nothing but the salivary amylase of humans is 6 to 8 times that of chimpanzees. This is indeed a major evolutionary challenge. I mean, it's an evolutionary change, which probably has helped humans to adapt to the present lifestyle from that old fruit-eating man. And the reasons why sweetening of, why the chapati is getting sweetened when you chew. So simple science principles behind all these daily phenomena. Color and flavor of food, you always enjoy that special taste, what you come when your mother cooks something with some oil. What really happens there? When you eat a bread, when you eat some baked items, you get a special flavor, and it changes when mother cooks on different days. It changes. You look at, see the sugar molecules, the sugar that comes out of the carbohydrates, the carbonyl groups. It reacts with the amino groups of protein and with heat, and it produces a very special structure and flavor. This is widely known as a Maillard reaction, And this is the reason for the mouth-watering cracker-type flavor of baked items. You can now understand each day when it is cooked, depending on the rate of heating, depending on what surface it is heated, and the quantity of food that is involved, certainly the change can, the taste can change, and probably that brings in the variety of food, and maybe that keeps us more interested in food. Very simple science behind it. Ripening of fruits probably is very familiar to all of you. It's based on a biological, inherent biological cycle. A hormone, a protein, produces ethylene, which is causing the color change and ripening. And basically ripening is nothing but change of carbohydrates into sugar. And of course, you are all aware of the artificial ripening and what the damage it can cause. You can imagine now. Egg boiling is another interesting chemistry element you can understand. You are very familiar with the white and yolk. You can read the content of these, the protein, water, and the fat lipids that are present in each. And when you break an egg, you will see fluid coming out, which is nothing but it is a protein in the liquid form, and it is stabilized internally through a 3D structure of the molecular structure. When you provide heating to that, you can see that there is a chemical change that is happening to the molecules, and what we call as protein denaturing, it undergoes a reversible change, and then you get a solid rubbery material. Of course, you can think about keeping it in a semi-solid state or solid state. It all depends on how you process it. But finally, if you provide excess heat, the complete denaturing happens, and finally you end up with nothing but a solid substance. Another interesting thing you can look at is the age-old cooking practice. You would have seen the garlics grandmothers take and then crush it. What is so big about crushing? When you crush it, an enzyme is released, and this enzyme forms an allicin, which breaks down to form a variety of healthful organosulfur. If you don't do this, probably you are losing a lot of, even though you are consuming garlics, you don't really get the benefit of a garlic. A similar thing applies to the cauliflower and broccoli as well. So here, the nutrition properties are lost if you really keep it for more time in the cut state, and if you are not using it promptly, because it gets oxidized. Many major constituents inside gets oxidized, and the glucosylsinosylates that forms isocyanates. This is responsible for cancer prevention properties. So even if you consume these materials, if you don't consume it in a proper fashion, as mentioned, then probably you are losing its nutritional properties. Now let us move on to the big picture. What is that big factory we are talking about? Photosynthesis. It is this photosynthesis which is providing us food, which really makes the life possible on Earth. It is nothing but a very simple reaction between carbon dioxide, water, and light. It forms hydrates of carbon, variety of material. It is able to generate through this very simple reaction. You can imagine the complexity of it involving so simple molecules. And you are familiar with this picture. You have a natural carbon cycle. The carbon is absorbed from atmosphere. It is getting converted into these materials, and this is consumed by living organisms, or it gets decays and carbon dioxide is back into atmosphere, and you have a complete natural cycle. So basically, the photosynthesis is fixing the carbon in the atmosphere into the food structure of living beings, and it provides them the energy. And also, ultimately, it gets converted into fuels and also fossils. But ultimately, a natural cycle was being maintained. So this is the energy cycle I was talking about. Basically, it was just nothing but the basic raw materials such as water and carbon dioxide was converted into getting products, and when somebody is eating it or when it is the material is when the living organisms die, or when it becomes fossil, it gets converted into an energy source, and also when that energy is used, it was going back as a raw material. The basic raw material as hydrogen, water, and carbon dioxide. Now, are we able to continue this? You just look at thousands of years of photosynthesis has produced a lot of coal, petrol, and all kind of fossil fuels. Now, with the industrialization, we are now converting coal and petrol indefinitely into heat and carbon dioxide. So this is a certain and irreversible change. So this industrialization process of the last 150, 200 years now has resulted in almost 35% increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Hopefully you would have listened in detail about these phenomena. I'm not dwelling detail into it. Maybe we can come back if there are questions on this. Now we all know, we are all lamenting about global warming. So this global warming ultimately has a basis of chemistry inside. This is what I am just trying to bring here, involving the simplest of molecules that we can talk about, the water, the carbon dioxide. So our inability, even though we have progressed so much, our inability to understand the cycle of these small molecules and probably getting shifted from its natural rhythm probably has resulted in something which is having a very catastrophic effect for future. So how this disruption has happened, as I already mentioned, we are now burning this fossil fuels and then getting the carbon dioxide back into atmosphere. We don't have a mechanism to bring it back. The vegetation is all set and there is an equilibrium which was already there. Now it has been disrupted. So and the other alarming aspect is that the carbon emission is fast approaching the photosynthesis based carbon sequestrations. Even before it is equalized, we are seeing a net rise in carbon dioxide, and then you can imagine if this carbon emission is going further up, what will be the effect? So certainly one needs to really think about it. Just let us look at the energy, what we talked about, how this energy has helped the humans to progress. Certainly, as I mentioned in the beginning, when the science helped us to progress, certainly science gave us several means for us to progress. One of them is indeed the fuel. Our ability to find convenient and more efficient fuels has certainly helped us to grow bigger and bigger. You just look at during the caveman days, we were using the firewood. And from there, we moved to coal. When we found coal, it was a wonder material. This black substance contains so much of energy, which otherwise would not have been stored. It would not have been carried in a small mass compared to a firewood. This helped humans to transport large amount of energy from one place to the other, and also to design engineering systems to operate it. Then the result is very clear. You have steam engines, trains running on it, industries working using that, the ships and so forth. So many new machineries and systems came into being. Certainly this propelled humans to a totally different level. So that's probably set in the industrialization. From there, the quest for humans reached to the liquid fuels. This brought in another dimension to the whole thing. You didn't need to carry the fuel from one place to the other. You can put through a pipe, you can pump it. It brought in a new dimension to it. It made it much more convenient. It was so easy to handle. The vehicle's design could be much more comfortable. It was another dimension it added. So then came LPG, natural gas, and all sorts of things. So and the other aspect you can look at is, just look at the chemistry aspect of it. The firewood, I am just representing the molecular structure here. You can see how complex it is. So much of aromatic rings are present in this. It makes it really complex. And when it came to coal, it became simpler and more easy to understand and more uniform. Certainly what it implies is that our ability to make use of it becomes better, and maybe the coal could contain more energy because of this reason. Your energy what produced is not getting wasted. It becomes useful energy. And then when it became petrol and diesel, the molecular structure again got much simpler and ordered. And of course, LPG, one of the simplest structures you can think about. Really, if you look into deeper, you can see an increasing hydrogen to carbon ratio. What it really means, it also means that your fuel is getting cleaner, isn't it? Really, from firewood to coal to diesel and LPG, or petrol and LPG and natural gas, certainly the fuel was getting cleaner. And along with what you can see is that the hydrogen to carbon ratio was getting better and better. Certainly, it is a pointer to us to look for a new fuel. So the chemical change and effect is very clear. So it is when you really understand this aspect, naturally you can point out what is your fuel of future. You come down to one of the simplest reaction you can think about. You are very much aware of this reaction. You would have conducted it in your school laboratories. You can split water into hydrogen and oxygen using electricity. You are adding energy to split one of the stable molecules you can think about into two basic constants of it, namely hydrogen and oxygen. Now you just think of the reverse. Suppose you have hydrogen and you can take oxygen from air, what it will form? It has to form water. And then what else you can get? You're reversing the former reaction. So certainly you should get back something else also is nothing but energy in the form of electricity itself. It is possible to get. So that is where we are going into. It is one of the simplest chemical reactions certainly you can think about, but maybe one of the most complex to really achieve. So that is the difference between the science and the technology to make that science a practical aspect. So whatever I mentioned probably in a graphical form, we can see here hydrogen and oxygen combines, and it produces heat and light and all kind of things along with water. This is the conventional process we are familiar with. Now I am talking about a special process where you employ an electrocatalyst. You conduct it through an electrochemical process. You are not allowing hydrogen and oxygen to mix directly and form water. Instead, you put them through an electrocatalyst in a special device, and then when you make them react and produce water, you are getting electrical energy directly out of it. So this is called the fuel cell process. Hopefully you would have listened to it in detail in the last lecture. So I hope you are familiar with this. So it is nothing but an electrochemical system. It converts chemical energy directly to electrical energy. A very familiar device, something similar to this is batteries. Batteries contain the materials within this, and it can convert it into a different product, and it can produce electricity. And once it is over, probably you can recharge it and use it. But its capacity is limited to what the material it is contained within this. But now when it comes to a fuel cell, it works in the same way, but the fuel and oxidant can be supplied from outside. It brings you a lot more flexibility. It can be operated like an engine. So a fuel cell is nothing but a battery working like an engine. So as some more details in case you are not gone into it in detail earlier. So you are letting hydrogen to react on an electrode called anode. It splits into hydrogen. Again, please note, hydrogen is not getting mixed with oxygen. Both are undergoing reactions independently. Oxygen reacts with the H+ that is coming from the other electrode, and then also the electrons, and then it produces water. So these two reactions happen on two different surfaces, two different places, and then you get water as a net output along with electricity. And that is decided by the inherent thermodynamics. This is made possible by an electrocatalyst. So this is the essence of a fuel cell that produces electricity directly from fuel like hydrogen. You can see an animation here. It works like a battery, a solid state kind of a system, silent system. unlike any noisy engines that are familiar with us today. So very simple chemical science has brought us to a very important tool, that a device that probably we can look for in future to have a clean energy and a sustainable way. How the sustainable way can be achieved? You look at the dream cycle, where this I mentioned just a few slides back. You can look at water as a starting material. You provide solar wind energy. You produce hydrogen and oxygen. This hydrogen oxygen gives you electric power and getting back to water. It is certainly a fully sustainable mechanism, unlike the existing gasoline or hydrocarbon-based energy system. You are moving away from a carbon-based energy system to a non-carbon-based energy system, which is totally independent of carbon and is working on hydrogen. People call it as hydrogen economy, and this hydrogen energy system is something considered to be one of the future something we can depend on for alleviating the problems that we are encountering today, such as climate change and global warming. And this is a system which was its development and its progress and the status where it has reached today has been immensely benefited and got advanced and promoted through space applications. Now, that is where we are coming to. Space applications certainly drive us to achieve something bigger. That probably everybody is familiar with that particular aspect, because when you come to space, you need to achieve something much harder, and you need materials, we need systems that works many order higher than what generally conventional systems do. And for this, you have to have materials and systems that are much more effective, much more efficient, much more robust. So it is the designing of such materials, finding such materials that really one has to go through when you're working on space missions. And when it comes to space missions, you would have seen rockets, you have seen satellites, you have seen spacecrafts which goes and come back, like aeroplanes, like shuttles. You have seen manned missions. You can talk about rovers. We can talk about exploratory missions to extraterrestrial bodies such as comets and asteroids and other planets. And you can also think about outposts in other extraterrestrial bodies such as Mars and Moon and all other extraterrestrial bodies. So there are different kinds of missions we can talk about. And what all these things are having common, they are all working mostly on extreme environment. We have to encounter extreme variations in temperature. There is an absolute vacuum. There is harmful radiation. There are meteorites, and many of the systems need to function without any repair for decades together, and they need to work very precisely. You can imagine a spacecraft like Pioneer, Voyager. They are working for decades together without any repair. So these are the kind of systems one has to design. That is common to each and every space missions. And then you have to look for high strength to weight ratio materials. Special materials are needed. New mechanisms need to be brought in. Novel energy systems are required, and so forth. You can list. There are so many of them. Now, you please look at the launch vehicles of ISRO. This is to just give you a kind of a glimpse of the magnitude of it. In case you have come across these slides earlier, maybe you must be much more familiar. This is very important because we need to understand the size and magnitude of these space application systems, whether it is a PSLV or GSLV or a GSLV Mark III or any other such launch vehicles of any other spacefaring nations. They are mammoth structures, which is 12 to 15-story building. It is equivalent to 12 to 15-story building. It weighs about several hundred tons, from 200 tons to 500 to 600 tons, carrying several tons of payloads or materials that it can carry to orbits. So such systems, for it to work, certainly it needs very complex engineering within. It provides you a glimpse of what really there inside a launch vehicle. Those who have visited our space museum probably would have got some idea about what I'm talking about today. So you have different propulsion systems in different stages. Essentially, these are multi-stage rockets, and why multi-staging is required probably will come into in a few slides from now. And each has got its own propulsion systems, propellants, oxidizer, and many other mechanisms for it to function effectively to take that satellite into the orbit. What really is a function of a launch vehicle? A launch vehicle has to take a satellite, a spacecraft of a definite size and volume from ground to a particular altitude. It has to inject that payload at a particular velocity in a specific direction. This is the simplest job probably a launch vehicle has to do. Now, to take 1,000, 2,000 kilograms to an altitude of say 200 kilometers or so, it involves tremendous amount of energy. You know, you have to move from say Calicut to Ernakulam. You need to take a vehicle, and that vehicle has to combust certain amount of fuel to reach there. There is an energy consumption that is involved. Similarly, a rocket has to consume an amount of energy to carry out this work. So you can simply calculate what is the minimum energy required from potential energy, kinetic energy calculations. From zero, you have to achieve certain altitude and also certain velocity. Very simple calculations will tell you, and that also will tell you what is the chemical energy that has to be spent or the amount of fuel that it has to be taken. So these calculations probably will give you the space propulsion systems. So I'll come to some of those calculations in due course. So when you look at the chemical science and engineering in general, propellants and propulsion system is something which I just mentioned right now. There are variety of polymeric products. Coatings are there, adhesives are there, structural sealing, piping, thermal protection. There are insulation materials, vibration isolators. There are ceramic composite and coatings, thermal protection materials that are involved. Energy systems are there, and of course electronics, and many more are there. I've just listed, grouped a few of them here. Let us look at the propulsion and propellants. In a very simple way, you can classify this into chemical, ionic, and nuclear. Let us talk about the chemical, which is the most widely used for all the common launch vehicles and rockets. And there again, you have solid, liquid, and cryogenic. And chemical rockets, what it really does, it has got an exothermic reaction inside, basically a reaction releasing a tremendous amount of energy, and it produces hot and high pressure gas products, and this gas is escaping at very high velocity. So basically, a solid composite or liquid bipropellant or liquid monopropellant are generally used for this purpose. You just take an example of, say, let's say our GSLV. As I said, you have a multi-stage rocket. This multi-stage rocket is really required to optimize the size and the amount of fuel you have to carry. And a century back, the mathematician called Tsiolkovsky provided us a much needed equation that really told us the amount of the stages that that are required, and the propellant that you can use. If you relate them, you can get the delta V, or the net velocity that you can achieve. It is this very simple equation that generally is used in the design of rockets for deciding the number of stages. Just imagine a GSLV of weighing about 418 tons and over a length of 49 meters, which can carry about more than 2,000 tons, 2,000 kilograms into orbit. It has, at the liftoff stage, when it is about to lift off, it has got about 90% propellant inside. So the total of 418 tons, 90% of it is nothing but pure chemicals. these chemicals are supposed to burn and provide the energy for the entire structure to move up. So this 10% or even less than the structure for it to reach the space with that payload, which is again 0.5% of the total weight, you have to spend this much of fuel. And that's where the multi-staging becomes essential. Without multi-staging, you cannot really optimize the quantity of fuel. The quantity of fuel you use will not be sufficient to carry a meaningful payload into the space. So one has to judiciously stage the launch vehicle to achieve the required delta V and the required altitude with the specified payload mass. And you can see that equation, it relates the each stage, what is the total mass of propellant involved, what is the initial mass, what is the final mass, basically after the burning of the propellant, what is the exhaust velocity. It relates all these into the delta V that can be achieved. And what is the exhaust velocity? It is nothing but a relation, it is a characteristic of that fuel, which is generally designated as the specific impulse, and it is measured in terms of time, basically in terms of seconds. So in order to achieve high delta V, one way is to have a very large rocket with a lot of fuel inside, but then that's not a practical way of doing it. The higher, bigger the size, then probably your mass is also increasing, your structure mass is also increasing, so you cannot endlessly increase the amount of fuel. Another one is to stage effectively, so that the M2 can be reduced. After each propulsion, the weight left over can be reduced by a suitable staging. That is the essence of staging. And the most important and the third is to have the good propellant that provides the highest VE or specific impulse. So it is here the ultimately the success of the rocketry depends on the effectiveness of the propellant. One has to find the right molecule which has got the right ISP and which can be processed, which can be used and effectively, which can be used safely, and so it becomes paramount for any space mission. So knowing and implementing a proper propellant is one of the critical aspect of successing space missions. You are familiar with the solid, liquid, and cryo, semi-cryo systems. You can see the specific impulse which I defined in the previous slide, how they compare. So certainly it is worthwhile to go for more and more or a larger ISPs, but then there are requirement of a different kind. Like when you start, you need a very high thrust, which achieving with a very big cryo system is not really feasible, or it is more economical and it is more design point of view, it is more advantageous to go for a solid in the beginning to provide the brute thrust that is required for the liftoff, and then gradually you move forward towards more complex but more effective propellant such as cryo in the final stages. So that is a design philosophy that is employed. And coming further to the propellants, we have a typical propellant, if you look at, which is used in a first stage of our launch vehicles, solid propellant. It has got a metal inside, which is burning with oxygen molecule and releasing tremendous amount of energy. Any burning, any material that reacts with oxygen, when it gets oxidized, it produces energy. So a metal produces a huge amount of energy, and for this, it requires the oxidizer also to be part of it. These are all very well known now, and generally, perchlorate based oxidizers are considered, which has got a lot of oxygen contained inside, and we cannot leave this alone. We need to have another high energy containing a binder as well along with it. So all this needs to be processed initially, it needs to be made it into a propellant class material, and then it has to be put into a properly designed solid motor. So when you look at that, so this is a typical solid motor, how it looks like. It has got a nozzle, which we are all very familiar, but inside that you have a solid propellant sitting inside. This solid propellant has got all the constant what I explained earlier, and you can see an igniter on top. This igniter is ignited first. That also has got its own specific propellant inside, and it gets ignited based on an electric current. When it gets heated up, it ignites, and this ignition in turn ignites the core propellant itself. And then it is important that this propellant undergoes a very sustained and controlled burning inside, producing gas the way we really require. And this gas gets pressurized inside and escapes through the nozzle, which provides a thrust on the reverse direction, the Newton's third law. So the processing of this propellant is a very critical technology that is really to be mastered in space application. So you can just imagine the kind of involvement of the chemical science and engineering in really making a successful space mission from this information. Let us just have a bird's eye view of variety of materials and chemicals that are employed in a typical vehicle like GSLV. Let us start from the bottom, wherein you have a solid motor surrounded by strap-ons. As we all know, it has got its propellant inside, a fuel is there, an oxidizer is there, it could be solid, it could be liquid, and then it has got several other elements, such as there is when the segments are joined, it requires a potting compound. There are adhesives for bonding. There are flame resistant materials. There are when there is flame is coming, there are materials that needs to resist this. There are seal materials, there are liner materials, and so there are a variety of materials that are used in the initial stage itself. Now coming to the second stage, similar thing applies there as well. It is a liquid propellant. It can be a solid propellant as well. In a GSLV, it is a liquid propellant. There are, when it comes to the nozzle, again, there are coatings, there are throat inserts, there are thermal pads to take care of the heat, and several more materials that are there in this one as well. And when it comes to the upper stage, in this case, it is a cryogenic engine. You have an igniter for this. You have thermal insulation. Cryo temperature goes as low as 20 Kelvin, and there are materials required to withstand this very low temperatures. Any material, any conventional material, when it gets so cold, it undergoes drastic change in property, and it breaks and it loses its functionality. So one has to find that molecule which resists these conditions and find them, and then we need to learn how to process and to make it into the useful artifacts that can be used for making of several materials. It could be a pipe, it could be a coating, it could be a covering, it could be an insulation material, it could be anything. And there are thermal screens, there are greases, various joints, there are sealing materials to avoid the explosive gases reaching undesirable places, and so many other materials that are there in the third stage as well. When we look at the what you call as payload fairing or the heat shield, there again there are a lot of structural adhesives. When you look at an adhesive, it can be a structural adhesive, it can be a sealing adhesive, it can be a coating, it can be a variety, it can have various functional requirements. We'll come to that in a short while. And then there is a thermal protection system. TPS means thermal protection systems. When the vehicle is moving through air at very high velocities, one has to withstand the aerodynamic heating, and there are especially designed materials required for this. And when you use various materials, there are bonding agents required. Overall, you can look at like this. There are several materials: sealing, adhesive, foams, and so forth, and several other materials. So it is a collection of hundreds of materials that really makes a vehicle, apart from the structural components and other functional devices that are there. Now, when you look at the satellite, it has got a launch vehicle also has got its batteries for it to function throughout its launch. And now when it comes to a satellite, you have battery cells as energy storage, you have liquid propellants, you have oxidizers, special films, plain metallized, cladded, different films are used for various requirements such as reflecting the heat and protection of various subsystems of satellite. There are adhesives as used in, and these adhesives need to function under extreme temperature conditions and should retain its adhesive properties for years together. So these are the complexities that are involved in it. There are special thermal paints that are involved. And why a paint is that it has many functions. It could be for aesthetic, it could be for insulative purpose, it could have a barrier effect from outside the moisture or some other material should not come in contact with your basic structure. Maybe that would be a functional requirement. There are functional solid film lubricants. So these are endless. This kind of material. There are so many materials used in with different quantities in making a satellite. Now we can also think of rubber sealing. It looks so simple. We are familiar with the gaskets in our pressure cooker. Various O-rings we have seen in various household devices. When it comes to a space system, as already you have come across, there are explosive materials and gases that are used. There are high temperature and pressure conditions that are existing. And the structure by itself is very massive, having numerous joints, wide temperature range, stringent leak rate requirements. For a satellite, it has to function for 10 to 15 years. The fuel that you carry has to be there inside without even the minutest leak. So in order to arrest it, the permissible leak rate has to be extremely small. It will run into the minus 6, 7, 8 of that order. And of course, the medium compatibility as well. So these are the criticalities that a space system already involved. A rubber sealing for a space system that requires to have. So these necessitate special kind of robust sealing using O-rings and gaskets in different sizes and ranges, processing complications coming into picture. There are high safety precautions because of the kind of propellants or the fuels that we are handling. One has to, and you would have seen the history of space missions, you would have seen certain incidents. I'm coming to that in due course. And there are a variety of rubber materials that are considered. It could be a silicon material, it could be an APDM, it could be neoprene, PTFE, whiten, butyl. There are so many materials that are identified depending on the requirements. Now, selection of this material, one has to have a very clear understanding of how these materials behave under different conditions. One has to have a thorough idea about its molecular structure and how these materials would react under different conditions in terms of physical properties and in terms of chemical affinities. So it has to be a case-specific material selection and its shapes, profiles, and designs. And of course, its development, processing, quality control, all these things are coming into picture. I'm just trying to give you the kind of the chemical science that are coming in play in achieving a successful space mission. This is a really picture which brings in a lot of sadness. Those who have followed space missions will never forget this picture. I'm talking about the Challenger disaster, and the phases are very familiar to us, happened decades back, and the reasons are also very known to us. It is nothing but a leakage of an O-ring resulted in a catastrophic incident, taking the lives of so many space travelers, bringing a lot of damages. And its impact on space mission itself was huge. So you can now understand how critical even a sealing system has to is. And so the design of the system, its behavior, basically the reason was attributed to the unexpected or undesirable change in the property of the O-ring, which was used for sealing at a particular under a particular condition. So the low temperature under that condition in that spaceport caused this and probably led to such a major disaster. So it is necessary to understand the various effects of such the environment would create on the materials that we are using. So one has to have that kind of an understanding about the behavior of that material under different conditions for it to be used for a critical mission such as this. Now, another important material, I won't be getting into each and different materials. These are all probably you are familiar with. You are familiar with polymeric material, organic materials, polymeric materials, ceramic materials. Ceramic material is something is known to humanity from time immemorial. We are all familiar with the rocks, dust, clay, mud, and all those kind of things. And we are all familiar with the kind of the properties they are having. They are very robust. They are very inert. They withstand temperature very high. We use it for even our old age homes. We were using, when we were using firewood, we were using these kind of materials. Unknowingly or knowingly, we were using this because we knew that it will stand this temperature and extreme conditions. So it is this specific bonding of this, maybe it is a silicate or a nitride or a carbide. I'm just coming to that. These bonds are highly stable. Basically, a ceramic is defined as a non-metallic, inorganic, solid compound that are formed by application of heat and sometimes heat and pressure, comprising at least two elements. It could be a metal, a metalloid, or a non-metallic element. So it has got such a very special property, and the bonding is also, it could be ionic or covalent or a mixed bonding. Now, when it comes to a ceramic material, and ceramic material is not only used in space, it is used for several applications in our day-to-day life as well. It can be an oxide, as silicates or aluminate, what are generally known. It could be it could be an oxide, alumina or titania kind of thing, or it could be a silicate, or it could be a nitride, or it could be a carbide. So it again depending on your requirement, we have to choose this, and then it has to be processed into the required sizes, shapes, and similar requirements. So silicon carbide is a widely used ceramic material. It is also known as carborundum, and it is generally not attacked by acids. In air, it forms a silicate. So that makes it really the attractive point. A silicon carbide, when it reacts with oxygen, it forms a very protective SiO2 coating. It forms naturally, and it is it happens at 1200 degrees. That is the beauty of this material. You see this natural mechanism that is coming in aid to us, and so it can be used even up to 1600 degrees. So these are the kind of materials that really enable high-end space missions. It could be the re-entry of a vehicle, or it could be such missions where high temperature is involved. And under inert conditions, its melting point is 2700 degrees and more. You can see its density and molar mass as well. Yeah. So the key properties you can look at, its hardness, elastic modulus, and so one has to look into different properties. It's not simply that chemical mechanism alone. It has to encompass different properties for it to be chosen for a particular application. This is applicable to each and every application we are talking about, whether it is a household application, whether it is a transport application, whether it is a space application. So the philosophy remains the same. It is the requirement and the capacity of that material to meet that. So accordingly, one has to choose that. And when you come to ceramic, suddenly its ability to withstand high temperature is making it a good thermal protection system. And one classic example of failure of a thermal protection system and its impact can be seen from the Columbia disaster, where the thermal protection system or the pad of the shuttle was lost during launch and when it was trying to re-enter, the vehicle could not stand the high temperature that generated during aerodynamic heating, and it was disintegrated, ending up in another major disaster of any space mission that we can think about. So, these are certain very functionally critical materials that I was just touching upon. Similar thing is coming to applicable to the polymeric adhesives and coatings. Polymers, I know many of you are familiar. I don't need to explain what a polymer is. Generally, they are used for a variety of applications. You cannot limit its applications. In space, they are used as structural node members, for environmental protection, as I mentioned, for coatings, etc., insulation purpose, thermal conductivity requirement, and various requirements they are used. Generally, they are chosen to have wide temperature range because of the environment we are in, vacuum stability. As you know, general conventional materials that we deal with for our day-to-day life, when you expose them to vacuum, they simply sublime, or they simply disintegrate. Many constituents from these materials will simply evaporate or gasify. You will lose the material when it is exposed to hard vacuum. So one has to identify such materials which withstand such hard vacuum conditions without any loss of its character or the properties. And this needs to be processable. Widely used materials are listed here. There are epoxy materials, there are silicones, there are acrylic systems. Again, system selection is very important here. It has to be application specific. One has to look at the specific requirement. Let us just look at one of the systems, that is silicon. You can see its structure. The beauty of it is a siloxane bond. What you can see is that SiO(Si) is highly strong compared to a generally known CC bond of any normal polymers. Because of this, they are highly heat resistant. As I mentioned in the case of ceramic, this is also highly heat resistant. May not be as high as, it is certainly not as high as a ceramic material, which is basically carbides, nitrides, or SiO. But these kind of bonds are also having good temperature stability compared to other general polymers of the order of 300 degrees compared to the ceramic temperature of 1600. Now you can closely look at the structure. Because of the kind of structure what you're seeing here, it has got it has got a helical intermolecular structure, and its intermolecular forces are low, and because of which it has got high flexibility, it has got high compressibility, good temperature properties as well. You can just look at the TG. What is TG? Glass transition temperature of a material. It is the temperature at which a polymer loses its mechanical property and starts behaving like a fluid, or it just starts flexible, or its solid properties it loses. So it is that temperature. That temperature is very critical. So it has got a very robust temperature range, and then you look at the water repellency. It has got, as I mentioned, it has just got a silicone structure. It has got two methyl groups attached, like an umbrella. You can look at that. Now, this SiO bond is really hydrophilic. It is a polar bond. It can take water, but this umbrella that is provided on outside, it is able to resist any water molecule from penetrating into the molecule. So this way, you get a highly water repellent, robust material, which can be very well used in such applications. This is basically a classical example of a structural property relationship of a molecule. One has to find out, one has to design such a molecule sometimes to achieve a particular application. It's a kind of a design of a molecule, not only the design of a hardware, one has to design a molecule as well for certain applications. It is applicable to the propellant, it is applicable to any other material. In order to achieve a very high-end requirement, one has to understand that requirement, how at a molecular level this can be achieved, and one has to really look at the various molecular combinations that can be done, and of course, keeping that processing or synthesizing feasibilities in mind, and then one has to process it, and it needs a tremendous understanding of at a molecular level. There are various software tools available to look into this, which would give you how the various atoms can be positioned with respect to each other, and this way you can design a molecule. These are another class of materials that are generally used for taking cryo liquids. Materials like polyimide generally considered, so they have a very robust temperature capabilities. The temperature range could be 10 Kelvin to 600 Kelvin. You need such even certain metallic materials do not stand such temperatures. They lose its mechanical properties. So this kind of materials come to aid. Its processing gets highly critical. It becomes very, it needs very special methods. So these kind of materials are also forming a very important part of successful space missions. Now let us come to energy systems. You can think about 20 to 30 number of batteries, different batteries sitting inside a launch vehicle. As I mentioned, a launch vehicle could be 12 to 15 meter tall, 12 to 15 story building tall, about 45 to 50 meters long. And in that, at different stages, you can find a different number of batteries sitting inside. What are their function? It has to provide from just before launch to the end of the launch, all through that 15-20 minutes or more, all the electronic systems, the computers, and various devices that need to function for a successful mission, those need to be powered by the batteries that are sitting inside. So they will be charged initially, and they'll be in a fully charged condition, and they'll be delivered the power when it is needed. And when it comes to a satellite, it could be a multi-kilowatt requirement. It could be 2000 watts, 3000, 5000 watts, or even 10 kilowatt requirement. So compared to a launch vehicle, a satellite system will be there in space, and it will be facing sun, and there are solar panels. Any typical satellite you can imagine, you cannot imagine without a solar panel. So the solar panel generates power, and it helps to charge the batteries whenever it is possible. But you can understand that never a satellite can have solar energy always. It goes into the Earth's shadow periodically, and during that time, for it to function and its full condition, it requires electric power, and it is that backup is provided by the batteries inside a satellite. So this is, as I already mentioned, these are electrochemical energy systems. So a launcher has a single use high power, whereas a satellite, it is a periodic running into thousands of cycles in its lifetime. And different systems that are in use are silver zinc, old silver zinc systems. You can look into the chemistry, electrochemistry of that. And then there are lithium-ion systems, which you must be much more familiar, because these are all sitting inside your mobiles. Many of you may be watching this program through a laptop, or maybe a mobile phone, which is powered by lithium-ion cells. And so satellites are using lithium-ion cells currently with a life of 10 years and more. They are rechargeable. Now, when you come to round-trip missions, such as a shuttle or reusable launch vehicles, or even sometimes manned vehicles, or a Moon-Mars base, there is a typical scenario that can come where the recharging capability is uncertain. You will not be able to periodically recharge. So it requires a power system which can deliver in one go. You need to deliver very high power, maybe 10 kilowatt or so, or 20 kilowatt, and this power needs to be delivered without any recharging. So it just has to work like an engine. How is it possible? It is here the device I mentioned some time back, fuel cells, come into picture. They are non-rechargeable. Basically, the fuel and oxidant are loaded onto the system, and it has got multi-day capability. It is with this kind of device, probably Neil Armstrong, Edwin Aldrin could reach up to moon, and many other space travelers could reach up to moon and also the space shuttle missions. Hundreds of space shuttle missions could be successfully completed. It is this device which helped all those missions to achieve its mandate. These are another class of electrochemical energy systems that are widely used in space missions. Another system you can think of, it is for the completion I'm just mentioning here, it is for exploratory missions. You may be imagining how a spacecraft can travel through space for 20 to 30 years. This is made possible by a new class of power system called radioisotope thermoelectric generator. It is working on the principle of radioisotope decaying and generating heat, and this heat is converted into electricity, and this is the principle that is by which you can operate for 20 to 30 years continuously. And the Pioneer, Voyager, these missions have successfully used this kind of system. This is certainly a semi-nuclear system with a lot of thermal engineering into it, and not at all a chemical system. Now, it will be very difficult at times to imagine the connection between electronics and really what chemical science has to do with electronics. I'm sure many here might not have thought about this earlier. You have multiple applications. You take whether your household devices or you consider space missions. There are multiple applications involved, and you have specific precision components, circuits, and circuit boards that are required to function under these conditions. There is a semiconductor processing involved. There are printed circuit boards that need to be processed. Now, coming to the semiconductor, as you would have studied in your physics class probably, it requires ultra high pure materials. We are talking about number of atoms that are moving, and electrons you need to have a count. And we design the material with a definite amount of non impurities, which are called as dopants. You cannot afford to have any other atom sitting inside that material. You need to have impurity control at ppb level, parts per billion level. You just imagine how this material can be processed. It requires very sophisticated, very special chemical processes. The environment needs to be controlled. When you talk about environment control, there are, when you sit in your house, your air itself is having huge amount of silicates flying around you in terms of dust. There is tons of moisture that is around you as humidity, and several other gases as well. So we cannot afford to have this when you process this kind of conditions. So you need to have a big plan that control this environment, so that your environment in which you are processing this material is controlled to the required level. You have a good control over it. You have a good monitoring of that. And then the material that you're handling needs to be monitored to the level of ppb to confirm that ultimately you are processing a material of your requirement and it functions. If you are not able to do that, the semiconductor, that device that you are processing in the end, it will fail to function when it really has to deliver the results. And when it comes to a printed circuit board with several semiconductor elements inside, there has to be a very precise control at nanometer, micrometer level. There is absolutely zero defect tolerance for all this. You cannot have a defect present inside. And the other aspect is that one has to process and then identify there is a defect also. There is a cross-checking technology also one has to have. Micron thick printing and plating is involved. Often electroplating is used. It is again electrochemical processes that are widely used. You would have seen several electroplating in your roadside shops. But when you talk about such devices, it is a huge, highly complex process. And again, here also numerous chemical operations to really produce a printed circuit board. When you really see an electronic hardware, the chemical process and in the background, probably it's not really apparent. It's very difficult to understand. So you can see that even a sophisticated electronic component you see, it could be a mobile phone, it could be a laptop computer, or it could be any other system. It could be a TV, what you're seeing, or it could be a rocket or a satellite. There are hundreds of chemical operations that have gone into making of those functionally critical electronic components. I think with this, I come to the end of the formal presentations. Before ending, I would also like to touch upon, probably which I have not covered here, is basically the much talked about the space biology, what Shajil sir was mentioning in the beginning. When you really search for life, that opens up as altogether different domain. I was just mentioning about the mission part of it. When you really look at the searching for life, certainly we can see that you at one point you look for life, similar molecules that we are familiar with on Earth. We look for such molecules in other places. Ultimately, looking at the chemistry of that, it could be, the fundamental material is certainly water. If water is present, we believe a molecule that we call as protein probably it can sustain life in such systems. But of course, people like you can probably think about a life form which is totally different, which could be thriving on a totally different system. It need not be working on the conventional water molecule. It could be working on some totally different systems. It's very interesting to look that as well. So it doesn't need to go through it doesn't need to require the need for a water there. It could be a non-protein based system, but we don't know whether such thing is existing. So the search for life certainly is going to be very challenging. Of course, we can find out life forms that are similar to that are there on Earth by a kind of looking for the chemical species that we are familiar with. But when you look at other systems, certainly it is going to be much more complex. So it is endless. It is about science is about observing and questioning, and you know it much better than me. And it gives us the never-ending urge. That is the most important thing, to find answers. Ultimately, science is not going to give you a final product. It gives you the way to find answers and solutions for your own problems or your own challenges that are in front of you. I hope this session was useful to you and will certainly provoke you, to urge you to think wider, hopefully more into this kind of fundamental elements also. And I again express my sincere gratitude for providing this occasion to interact with you, and I'm happy if I can handle some questions from you as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shinish sir. It was really a marvelous talk, and we all enjoyed. You started from life and passed to the fuels, and you finally passed through the steps into our PSLV and all the components there, the chemistry there. Finally, you read the science. What is science? It's a never-ending urge for answers and solutions. That's a good philosophical advice to our students, that they are in need of that. That's the environment we are expecting from these kind of activities, sir. And really, these things and we are proud to be with you, because I know we got you by the action of our chief mentor E.K. Kutty sir, in association with our honorable VUSSC director Somnath sir. I heard about that from E.K. Kutty sir, and a great thank you to you, sir. And I invite E.K. Kutty sir to make a reflection on these. After that, we will continue for the Q&A session. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Shajil Marsh. An excellent talk on the 19th session of the UL Space Club webinar. And we are extremely grateful to Dr. Shanit for having prepared so well and delivered a great address covering an important area of space, chemistry, application of chemistry in space. Dr. Shanid is involved in battery for our launch vehicles and satellites. And it's a very, very critical component for functioning of the rocket and satellite. So his contribution is very high. And we are very, very grateful to you, Dr. Shanid, for delivering an extremely informative and knowledgeable talk. This, I'm sure, is going to generate lots of questions, because the way, the style of delivery itself, I could see that, it is eliciting the kind of knowledge that is residing in these school students here. And Shanid has done his job exceedingly well. I must thank Dr. Shanid for it. And also, I use this occasion to thank Dr. Somnath, S. Somnath, Director of VSSE, who has been so kind and so helpful for bringing up our students to a great level. So thank you very much. It's very so nice of you. And we wish that we'll have more occasions to interact with you. Thank you very much, Dr. Shani.
Thank you, Gutti sir, for your reflection here. And we have one more mentor with us from UL Space Club. He was also from ISRO. He was a former deputy director, K. Jairam sir, for his reflection with a few words.
Good afternoon. In fact, I have nothing more to add than what Gutti sir has already told. And in fact, we are very, very fortunate to be listening to you, sir. Very well structured and well delivered lecture. In fact, it would have definitely kindled the aspirations and the spirit of inquiry of all our children. And you have started off, as Shajil Marsh said, from our own very own kitchen, the rice grains, and then slowly but surely gone through the entire domain of and plethora of materials that go into the launch vehicles and the complexities behind that. So I think this does not end here, and we definitely look forward to many more sessions from you. And our students and the people are anxiously waiting to put forth their questions to you. So without wasting time, I thank you once again, and just ask Shajil to take over.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you, sir. Next, we are waiting for the warm question answer session, and our crew is ready to accept these questions and deliver to our beloved and honorable Shani sir. And it's over to Bharat and team to handle this Q&A session.
Roger that, Shajil sir. In fact, it has been a very beautiful session as a whole. Shajil sir started from the most basic things, like how important chemistry is to our very existence, and then to the applications of chemistry in our daily lives, and then to the more advanced things of things that the students here are very much interested in, like how chemistry is related to space science and things like that. So I'm not a person who can judge you. I'm not a person who can even summarize this, but summarizing the whole session in a sentence, all I can say is that, well, there is chemistry in everything. So I would like to highlight the sentence that Shanid sir ended with, that science provides an urge to find answers and solutions. And there has been a great deal of questioning going on in the chat box. and it is kind of like a difficult job to articulate the questions and ask the best ones. And since we don't have great deal of time with us, I won't be able to ask all the questions, so please pardon me for that. But let me try to ask the most important questions, many of them in fact within the small time frame that is provided to me. So let me try to adopt the same strategy Shanid sir used as well, from the more basic aspects. So the first question is from a UL Space Club member, and his name is Navneet S. His question is based on like a more general question, and his question is, sir, how can smoking of incense stick help in fastening of the ripening of a fruit? So he's asking that what is the chemistry behind it?
Would you please repeat the question?
So his question is, how can the smoking of incense sticks help in fastening the ripening of a fruit? So what is the chemistry behind that?
Yeah. So basically, the change of the ripening is nothing but transformation of the carbohydrates into sugar. So this is generally happening within a fruit. Now, when you are externally inducing, say, sort of methylene gas, you are inducing this phenomena inside. So basically, the reaction is the same, but it is induced externally, not it is happening from within. Generally, a fruit, the internal hormonal cycle, internal protein cycle generates this gas, and that induces a change of carbohydrate to sugar or sugar molecules. But when you are inducing it from externally, the same thing can happen, but the problem will be the external elements, whatever you use, will form a residue on the fruit, and that can be harmful at times. So though internally the chemistry is the same, it is converting into sugar, the external elements that can get deposited on it can create problems.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from an ISRO veteran, and the question has been something that a lot of people doubt about, particularly senior citizens. A lot of old people have this particular doubt, and the question was about diabetes. So it would be an absolute mess if I asked that question myself. So it is my honor to invite the person who asked it, and it is none other than Dr. M.R. Shivaraman. So I would like to request Dr. M.R. Shivaraman to please come forward and ask that particular question.
Hello, can you hear?
Yeah, certainly, sir. Please.
Yeah. Myself, Dr. Shivaraman. I am basically a diabetic patient, and I have basic doubt.
Okay, sir. I'll try to answer.
Rice and wheat too much usually causes increase in the blood sugar. That I have myself tested it. So I used to eat rice and chapati less and eat more vegetables. But eating fruit which contains sugar, I find that it doesn't cause increase the blood sugar, especially in the morning hours. If I eat in the night an apple juice, it doesn't gives me energy, but the sugar level never increases in the morning. What is the basic reason? What is the sugar difference?
No, your question is when you are eating sugar, fruit, though it contains sugar, it is not increasing to the level what it will happen with rice or chapati.
Correct.
Okay, I'm not really a kind of an expert to tell that, but based on my basic knowledge, what I can say is that the blood sugar is a function of the agility with which your body interacts with that whatever you intake, whether it is chapati which is getting digested inside. Basically your saliva is digesting it into similar maltose sugar, and then body absorb it, it goes into your blood, and then your insulin is acting on it. So it relates to all these aspects. Now one thing is certain sugars are having a latency. It gets reflected in a gradual fashion. There are certain sugars that is generated, say rice. Rice has got a very fast conversion capability compared to wheat and probably the fruit. So because of which it gets, though the amount of sugar may be the same, the rate at which it gets into the blood is faster. it could be that could be the reason, because I am not really an expert to comment on it. This is based on my basic understanding. I'm just trying to answer you. So it is not about the sugar content in the food by itself. It is about the way your body or your body chemicals are able to deal with that sugar. That is also important.
Okay, I got it.
Thank you so much, sir. The next question is from Eldo Sambergis, and he's asked, sir, I've heard about a diamond cell which can power a device for many years. What is the chemistry behind such a diamond cell?
Diamond cell, can you just elaborate? Is there any further detail available?
It would be good if Eldo can ask the question right now, if he has any other further references. Eldo? Excuse me, Eldo Sambergis. Please do unmute your mic and switch on your camera if you are currently there. Sir, I think there is a small problem with him.
I'm here.
Yeah, he is. Okay. Eldo, can you please elaborate that
I
question?
heard in a YouTube channel that there is diamond cell which can power a mobile phone for many years. It is a nuclear chemical cell.
Yeah.
I think it is covered under a artificial diamond. That's it. Hello.
Okay, Eldo.
I could not get you clearly.
Hello.
Hello, Eldo. Can you please repeat it once more?
I heard it from a YouTube channel that it's diamond cell, which is a nuclear cell, which was covered by artificial diamond.
Okay. And it produces electricity, isn't it?
Yes, it can produce electricity for many years.
No, see, there are nuclear devices which generates through decay. I'm not fully familiar with the diamond cell, but what I can imagine now is that like a radioisotope thermoelectric generator, it produces heat, and one can convert the heat into electricity through a Seebeck effect, or you can convert that heat into a high pressure system, and that can be used for converting again back to electricity. The idea behind nuclear system is that it has got very high half-life, and so it can power for longer duration. But I'm not able to imagine how it can power your portable devices. These are generally considered for fairly large systems. I'm not aware of that engineering has come to such miniature levels, which I'm not fully aware. Maybe I can come back to you later.
Okay, sir. The next question is from another UL Space Club friend, and he has come up with kind of like a very innovative idea indeed. So his question is that why can't we store electricity from lightning for our consumption?
Yeah, this is an age-old question. The very simple reason is the magnitude of energy that is released in a very, very short amount of time is so huge that we cannot have a mechanism to absorb it. See, when that electricity is an energy in transit. So we have to accept that energy in some form, and then either you have to store it or you have to dissipate it for useful requirements. So this is something really a challenge. So there are various experiments people have tried, sheerly because of the magnitude of the energy that is involved. It is very difficult to design a system to accept it. And other than conducting it into the earth and making it safe, practically it is not that easy. Maybe one can think about a kind of a reaction, but then it becomes an explosive reaction. So the complexity is it's simply because of the huge amount of energy that is involved, which needs to be dealt with in, say, milliseconds or microseconds. So that becomes a big engineering challenge. We have various mechanism of storing energy, but none of these things are useful for this kind of scenario.
Thank you, sir. No hard feelings, Abhinav. Don't be sad. Don't lose faith. You still have the opportunity. You still have the opportunity. In fact, you could in the future find a solution which might solve the current energy crisis that we have. So don't lose faith. You can become a hero. The next question is from another UL Space Club member, and his name is Abhiram TP. And the question seems to be a bit long, so and it is difficult for me to comprehend myself. So the better person to ask the question is Abhiram himself. So Abhiram, can you please come forward and ask your question about Sea Dragon?
Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, Abhiram, you're audible. Can you please switch on your camera as well? If it is possible, okay. Okay, Abhiram,
Okay.
that's perfect. You can ask your question.
First of all, thank you, sir, for such a wonderful class and informative class. I am Abhiram DP, a member of UL Space Club. Sir, my doubt is this. Sea Dragon was a rocket project which powered with thermonuclear fuel, but it is not possible till now because of some economical problems. I don't know brief about it. When I watched a video about Sea Dragon, the presenter said that there will be some critical environment and etc. Problems with thermonuclear fuels and with huge sound pollution. So can we make a solution for this problem, and can we turn the space exploration, especially crewed mission, into thermonuclear fuels? The thermonuclear fuel gives us more thrust, more ISP with small amount of fuel. Can you describe about it?
No, there are various such systems available which has got very attractive capabilities, but ultimately it lies in perfecting that and developing the technology which can be economically and effectively used for an application. And some of these systems cannot be used for everything. It can be used for certain special requirements also. What you said is also a promising system, but I don't expect it to replace the existing systems altogether. See, even when you have, you just imagine the simple propulsion systems we have it today. Even within the chemical propulsion systems, you have solid, liquid, and cryo. And then cryo is having much better specific impulse, etc. Even then, you are not replacing that applications where solid propulsion is working, even though it has got a lower ISP. There are specific application-related reasons. So you may not be able to generalize that. It will have its own niche areas that probably will get clearer when such systems get perfected and they are put into use and their operations are fully studied. Probably such things will emerge. It is very difficult to make a general comment on that. Certainly, it is a promising system for future for its own niche application.
Thank you,
sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Abhiram. The next question is from Shivaraman sir again. So it would be better if I narrate that. He has asked, what are the best solid and liquid fuels that can be used in rockets to give maximum thrust with minimum weight of fuel while burning? Which are the current fuels being used? And could you please give us an insight of any other fuels that are currently being researched about, or if there is any possibility of the fuels currently being used to be changed in any time soon?
For a long time, when it comes to solid propulsion, for a long time, we have been talking about the kind of combination what I explained during my presentation. Something like a metal fuel, like it could be an aluminum, combined with perchlorates as some oxidizers, and then using a rubbery material called it could be a polybutadiene or something like that. It is a very robust polymeric material. These are all mixed together and formed into a composite kind of structure, and this is used as a solid propulsion propellant. So for a long time, almost all spacefaring nations are very effectively using this, with minor variations in the kind of characteristics because of the changes in technology, etc. This is a well stable system, except for minor improvisations. I don't expect it to get replaced by something altogether, because this is a stabilized system. We don't need to make a change just for the sake of a change, unless it brings in a very specific advantage in some way. This is a well stabilized system. Coming to liquid, we have basically, again, basically you look at nitrogen containing materials like hydrazines and things like that as the propellants. Generally it is used with oxides of nitrogen as the oxidizer. This is the pure chemical propellant. You can call the cryo also as a liquid propellant, but again, generally it is called as cryo, but that again, liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen. But in between you have things like, semi-cryo, where you may think of hydrocarbons as fuel and liquid oxygen as oxidant. It has an advantage over cryo in that you can deal with kerosene in a much better way compared to liquefied hydrogen, because hydrogen needs to be liquefied, and kept at extremely low temperature, which that issue doesn't arise with semi-cryo engine. So that is probably one of the future. Again, this is many nations have started this. We ourselves are having a good work on this. So this again is a kind of, fairly stable systems what we have today. And then comes ionic propulsion and things like that, which are considered for low thrust missions, which requires some small forces like satellite thrusters and all that. We don't consider it for massive launch vehicles.
Thank you, sir. Here is another question which is very much connected to this particular question. With what you just ended your answer. A new concept of laser augmented chemical propulsion is proposed to control variable thrust and to turn on or off thrust easily by a low power laser. What are the challenges until today, like this optical design faces, and what will be the compounds in the propellant? The question is from Febin Firshad, and he is also a UL Space Club member.
Okay, first part is certainly, laser, when you're using for this kind of requirements, controlling it and generating the laser, it requires electrical energy. So as a total system, it is going to be very much involved compared to what we have today. We are now talking about a chemical propulsion system where you need a small amount of power in the beginning to generate the ignition, and then it is designed to, in the case of a solid propulsion, it is designed to do the job on its own. It is designed to do that. You don't need to have any external control over it. And when it comes to a liquid propellant, again, the burning is on its own, except for the flow regulations, what you do. These are all well-established technologies. But when it comes to laser, generating laser requires tremendous amount of power, an electrical storage system, battery requirements goes up, and then controlling the laser and then manipulating a chemical reaction with that, it is another added technological challenge. So these are all areas. Probably you can have kind of additional control over the propulsion. Possible that this will find application in certain high precision requirements, like maybe orbit injection in the case of exploratory missions, or similar places where you need a very precise control over the propulsion system. Again, I don't consider it for all kind of propulsions, like total replacement of all propulsion systems. It may not be something that may come up These are all niche application based activities.
Okay, sir. So if time allows, we might ask 2 questions, but if there is no time, this might be the last question that we'll be asking. There has been a couple of questions on a very exciting recent discovery about the detection of phosphine gases on the atmosphere of Venus. So there has been a few questions regarding that. So we would expect your comment on that particular discovery, how important the detection of phosphine gas is to our scientific understanding of the solar system and Venus in itself, and in fact life outside the earth. So please give us a comment on that, and please do tell us how gases like phosphine and in fact methane, which was found in the atmosphere of Mars, has been so important, and why do we consider them as groundbreaking?
Yeah, detection of methane has been one of the major objective of Mars missions searching for life. Similarly, on other planets as well. The point here is that we are looking for signatures of life, and as you know, methane and phosphine have. It is believed that bacteria can generate these gases. That's where the attraction lies. So we are closely looking at these gases, whether they are originated by the bacteria, which is a living organism. There are bacteria that are known to generate this, and in case these bacteria are present in good amount, it is possible that these gases are generated and these are present in the atmosphere. That is one school of thought, but we cannot totally say that detection of methane or phosphine around will confirm that, because these gases can be generated by other mechanisms as well. For example, in the case of methane, it could be due to geological activities as well, because ultimately it requires carbon and hydrogen, and similarly for phosphine as well. So it has got both origins possible, but as long as since we are yet to find out the basic origin of these gases, whether it is geological or biological, the doubt remains or the expectation remains. So ultimately the point is that it could be the signature of presence of bacteria or similar life forms which has the capability to generate these gases. So this is the reason why we are getting attracted to it.
Thank you, sir. Maybe a couple of minutes to ask the final question. A lot of people have been very interested in asking questions about cryogenic engines. So let's sum up it into a single question. Can you please introduce cryogenic engines to the participants who are left in this conversation right now? Please do tell them what a cryogenic engine is, what the fuels used in it are, and what are the advantages and disadvantages. And is there any possibility of something else coming in?
Yeah, so cryo means low temperature. So basically cryogenic engine means an engine that employs extremely low temperatures. Now, why that is required? Now you look at what an engine does. A rocket engine basically has to do the propulsion. It has got a propellant, basically a fuel and an oxidizer. So I mentioned some of the fuels that generally are used. So the purpose of them is they have to burn in a very stable and sustained manner, and then they have to generate gases which will be developed to very high pressures. So the molecular weight of such gas products are important here. You need a large volume to be generated. Large volume can be generated when the products molecular sizes are very small. So you get large volume. More molecules generates larger volume. More molar mass, the more number of moles, it generates larger volume. So so this is what is required. And then when you look at different such fuels, certainly the simplest fuel is hydrogen. There is nothing more simpler than hydrogen. So hydrogen, if you use, and you are producing water, which is another simplest of the molecules and the smallest of the molecules. So certainly hydrogen with oxygen is one of the best such system you can think of. There is no doubt on that. And the other attractive point is that it is totally non-toxic, absolutely environment friendly. There is absolutely no issue, and it's a highly sustainable system. But the problem lies is that both are gases under normal conditions. So in a rocket engine which is sitting on the launch pad, which is at room temperature conditions, for you to store it, you need a large amount of these fuels in several hundreds of tons or even tens of tons. So when it is tons of gases need to be taken, its volume is very huge. So you have to store it in a small space that is available in a rocket. It's a very finite space, a few tens of liters or a few hundreds of liters. So in that, you have to contain these tons of gas. How you can do that? You have to employ pressure and you have to employ temperature and you have to liquefy them. So you store it in as liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. This requires the temperatures to be brought down as low as 20 Kelvin. So 20 Kelvin, you can imagine 273 Kelvin is 0 degree, and we are talking about 300 plus temperature, 300 Kelvin for your room temperature conditions. So when that is so, it is about 250 degrees further down or even 300 degrees further down, it is going to be extremely cold. So this storage is a challenge. The materials, you cannot stop from storing. You have to store it, you have to pump the liquid into your engine, you have to use them, you have to ignite them. There are numerous challenges that are present, and you have to contain it for a longer time. You have to retain the temperature. When the vehicle is in the launch pad at this 20 degree Kelvin, when you are storing this liquid will absorb heat from surroundings and it will start boiling, because 20 degree is sufficient for it to boil, and it will generate huge pressure and it can explode. So one has to retain the temperature. It needs a tremendous amount of insulation. That insulation becomes very, very big challenge. Your external temperature is around 300 plus Kelvin and internal temperature 20 Kelvin. You have a huge temperature gradient and heat will get naturally into the tank, and it can create this problem. So all these engineering challenges need to be tackled to develop an engine and use it. And that is, but if you do it, probably compared to all other chemical propulsion systems,
Wait, sir.
Okay, sir.
Hello. Yeah, are you able to listen to me?
Yes,
sir.
yes, no problem.
Yeah, I mean, I could see some connection problem here. That's why I stopped. So I'll continue. It is a big challenge. That's why cryogenic engine is considered to be a big challenge, and it took its time. And then now we have our own cryogenic engine. So it has got low temperature management systems. It is storage system plus plumbing system, ignition system. All these are totally new elements, and you need to deal with hydrogen and oxygen in liquid gases. So this is in short probably describes what is involved in a cryogenic engine. It simply uses
now the connection is lost.
Hello, sir. I think
We lost the connection or what?
Yeah.
Bharat?
Okay, he has come back. He has come back, sir.
Okay, sir.
Come back.
yes.
Dr. Shanid has come back.
Yeah, please go on, please.
Okay,
I
sir.
hope
So,
my answer was complete. Probably.
yes, okay, so there has been a request, one final question. It is from Damodaran sir. Damodaran sir is an inevitable part of UL Space Club, and his question is thus inevitable as well. So let me please invite Damodaran sir to ask the final question of today's Q&A session.
Thank you, Bharat. Sir, we know there is a colorful world of change. Okay, I came to see an advertisement of a paint company. That is, somebody throws water towards a wall and it rebounds and saying water cannot drench the wall as it is painted by so and so paint. Is there a chemistry in that statement? Is it silicon oxygen methyl bonding?
I couldn't get that crux of that question. What he is doing is water is throwing.
Throwing water towards the wall.
Okay.
And it rebounds. And the statement is that the water cannot drench the wall.
Yeah, I mean, it's, as I understand, it is highly hydrophobic. It has got a, it contains that kind of chemical which are hydrophobic in nature. Its molecular structure is such that in one of my slides, I mentioned that you can choose the constituent of the paint such that it has got a molecular structure which will repel water molecule. For example, if you consider methyl groups or even the very familiar Teflon kind of a structure, probably it will not attract water. So water will not be able to wet that surface. So there are a variety of such materials available. One of the simplest such coating is the coating in our non-stick pan, what we are using. It is the simplest Teflon, PTFE, polytetrafluoroethylene. Similar, there are several materials like that, which can be used in paints, and many paints are using these days so that water cannot seep into it. And another important thing is, apart from this water repulsion capacity, they designed the molecule in such a way that it can cover the surface without any crack. It forms a non-cracking uniform film over the entire surface. That is also very important. So if you have these two features, then whatever you mentioned can be achieved. I have not come across that advertisement, but this is probably the science behind that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Damodaran, sir. It has been a pleasure moderating today's Q&A session. This brings us to the end of the Q&A session, and it is time to move on to the next session. But an important thing to tell you is that if your questions have not been asked, don't worry. You can ask your questions in our platform Cosmos. We can discuss it and find answers. And if your questions are still not able to be solved, I hope Dr. Shaneeth will be free to answer those difficult questions, if any. I hope he'll be free. We can think about that later on. So if you want to, if you're not a person who has joined Cosmos, and if you want to join Cosmos, you can give us a WhatsApp message to the phone numbers that have been provided. We'll provide our contact numbers one last time. I would request Varun to please provide them in the chat box. And about the UL Space Quiz, the 19th edition of UL Space Quiz, I guess all of you have received the link in the chat box. The link will only be activated once the vote of thanks has been delivered. It will only be activated once the vote of thanks has been delivered. And the last time for the submission is 7 p.m. So make sure that you submit the answers before 7 p.m. And your scores and your time of submission is what will matter for making your rankings. So make sure the faster you submit it, the better. So that is it from my part. Over to Shajil sir for the concluding session.
Okay, thank you, Bharat. And we are enjoying your wonderful handling of this Q&A session. And along with that, we are wondering with the energy static level of our energy master, Dr. Shaneeth. And he started the same energy and he ended the same energy. That pleasant face, that is that very motivating face from your part, sir. And it's our time to declare about the next day's program, because in 1957, I think the October 4th started the first launch of Sputnik, and that's why we are celebrating the Space Week. And VSSC is doing a lot of things that we have received from the Director General of Education. Today we received that information. All students are ready to participate in that, and our UL Space Club is also doing some small activities in our part, and that may be declared by our mentor E.K. Kutty sir here. Sir, mic is, please unmute the mic.
Oh, you are right. You are right. Okay. We had an excellent day and a very, very nice talk, which I think probably everybody enjoyed. Now, about our forthcoming program, next Saturday, we have the talk by Dr. K. Rajiv of Space Physics Laboratory, VSSC, colleague of Dr. Shanid. And he is going to talk on Earth's environment and its diagnosis from space. Dr. Rajiv has been a visitor to Calicut for some time. I've met him twice here. Last year he was in our planetarium, and is an excellent speaker like Shanid. So next Saturday at this time we are going to have that. Then what Shajil Marsh said about the Space Week, we are contemplating a program, special programs on 5th and 7th October. The theme this time is Satellite Improve Life. In fact, that is the theme of ISRO itself. So it's a fantastic theme the world body has selected, and we are going to have a nice presentations and discussions by students, and we are lined up very important people who handled these things, like Dr. V.S. Hegde, who was chairman cum managing director of our Andrix, who was our scientific secretary, etc., who knows everything on application side. He's a remote sensing man, he's a disaster management man, and things like that. We have also Dr. Rangarajan, our INSAT person, who was MCF director, whom you know, he has come and talked to you. Hegde is coming for a first time to talk to you. And in addition, we have Dr. YVN Krishnamurthy, senior professor and registrar of IIST, for the same program. It will be their program, whether it is on 5th, who is coming on 5th, who is on 7th, is yet to be decided. We'll get to know all that thing, and then we'll inform you. And Dr. Ganesh Raj, who is very well known to you, who has been coming to Calicut very often. So these four veterans of ISRO will be facing you during 5th and 7th of October. So that is it about the forthcoming programs. Thank you very much for your patience and involved. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Guru sir, for your information about our next week program, especially the Space Week. And next, we are sitting under the umbrella of ULCCS, Uralingal Labour Contact Society, and that is supporting the UL Space Club. And the next is the vote of thanks from part of the ULCCS. And we have Damodaran sir. He was a former education officer in General Education Department. Now he's in charge of Vagbada and the Achieve project. He controls around 500 students all over rural students of Kozhikode district. And now he's handling the UL Space Club also. Welcome Damodaran sir to make that vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir. I am very happy to assume the charge. Today, the 19th webinar brought in a fine, lively atmosphere. Dr. Sanif served a prosperous feast for us. He said, the tremendous development we achieved are on the wings of science. Chemistry is a science, and therefore there is a chemistry in everything around us. In every nook and corner of our life, there is a chemistry that the beloved speaker tried to establish by giving a lot of examples. The chemistry in crushing of garlic in cooking, the artificial ripening of fruits, etc. A lot of information about the chemistry of rocketry, ceramic, electronic components, and the scope of hydrogen oxygen battery, etc. It's all well said with a lot of energy and enthusiasm. I appreciate your mode of presentation, and I am proud to extend our gratitude on behalf of ULCCS Foundation. Thank you for your brilliant talk on a very relevant topic. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again. I thank the veterans participated in the webinar and the persons behind the organization of this webinar, like Kuti sir, Jayaraman sir, Shajil master, Bharat Srijit, Varun, Abhiram, Adidev, etc. I thank all the participants of this webinar. Thanking you all again, and let me stop my words.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Damodaran sir. I think it is time for the UL Space Quiz. Adil will be activating the link. Please do see if the link is activated, and if not, please do tell us.
Dr. Shanid, you were there when your division was known as battery division some time back.